We are currently sailing on board Royal Caribbean's Independence of the Seas. Today is our first day, so we will take you through Embarkation in Southampton, sail away, and all the entertainment that we watched on the evening.
If you don't want to miss everything that we get up to on board this cruise and any of our future cruises, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Last night we stayed overnight in Southampton at the White Star Tavern. We've never stayed in this hotel before and we actually thought that it was a great option to use. It was pretty centrally located, the beds were super comfy and we really enjoyed our overnight stay. This visit that we had was courtesy actually of Visit Southampton and Sail Away magazine, so thanks to both of them for arranging that for us.
Prior to the cruise, there were a couple of things you needed to do on the app which involved checking in. Because we checked in quite early, we managed to get a really nice early time of 11:30 a.m. You also needed to add on a photograph and your passport details. The day before the cruise, you also need to fill in a little questionnaire which basically asks you if you're 23 weeks pregnant or more and if you've got any symptoms of sickness or a cold. The only thing that we needed to print off were the luggage labels because our boarding passes were on our phone saved in our Apple wallets.
We checked out of our hotel at 11 o'clock in the morning, which was the hotel's checkout time. We were able to get in an Uber and head straight over to the port. We had to wait probably about 5 minutes for the Uber. It was no hassle at all. It picked us up and took us straight to the port and it was only a 5 to 10 minute drive. We were departing from City Cruise Terminal. It wouldn't have been walkable with our luggage from the hotel we were staying at, but there are definitely hotels in Southampton that were within walking distance.
When we got out of the taxi, we were really surprised that our luggage was taken straight off us. Normally we're used to having to wheel it to the little luggage pods ourselves, but they were put onto little carts and then we were sent to walk towards the terminal building. When you go into the terminal building, you go straight through security, which is just like going through airport security. Then you head through to a check-in part where they checked our passports. After you go through security, you head to an area which is where everybody's checking in. The staff have all got iPads and they check basically your passport and your sea pass. You are then sent straight on to the ship. It is probably the quickest embarkation we have ever known. From getting out of the taxi to getting to our muster station, it was slightly less than 15 minutes.
The first thing that you're encouraged to do when you get on the ship is head straight to your muster station and get that ticked off. You just need your boarding pass scanning at the muster station to show that you have attended. It was a really simple process and very similar to what we've experienced on other cruise lines. There were a couple of steps to complete in the app for muster as well, which was the usual muster video, and you also had to play a little clip of the ship sounding the general emergency signal. So we did that and that was all ticked off so we could just head straight out to enjoy the cruise.
The first thing that we decided to do once we got on board was have a little wander around and try to get our bearings. So we walked through the Royal Promenade first, which we were excited to see what that was like, as we've seen so many videos and photographs of it previously. We then headed up to the Windjammer just to see how busy it was up there because we'd heard it could be chaotic. Because we were on so early, it was pretty quiet in there. There was a really good selection of food and we loved seeing the different drinks you could get for free in there, such as the lemonade, and the water was already poured ready. So we just sat down and had a little drink because we felt like we'd not stopped basically since we'd left the hotel. We then carried on exploring around the ship because it was still relatively quiet on board and it was a good way of seeing it all.
Then we headed back down to the Royal Promenade and took a seat in the Ale and Anchor. In there, we both chose a cocktail. We had the same one, I think it was called Pretty in Pink, and it was a really nice cocktail. We noticed straight away that the staff on board seemed super friendly, coming over and giving us recommendations and all wanting to stop for a chat. So far, so good. While we were in there, we also collected our soft drinks cup that we can use on the Coca-Cola Freestyle machines. So we both have a deluxe drinks package for this cruise and you get given one of these cups as part of the package, so you could go fill it up whenever you want with soft drinks.
There was then an announcement that the cabins were ready for people to go to. So we finished off our drinks and headed to our cabin. We were very disappointed when we came into our cabin because it clearly hadn't been cleaned properly, with hair still all in the bathroom from the previous occupants. Also, our bed was still set up as a king rather than twins, which is what we'd requested. The cabin steward came and spoke to us, and we told him what our issues were, and he told us that he would sort it out. The cabin steward still didn't really clean it properly, and there were still some hairs in there, so we then went to reception to log it. We had taken a few photos to show them. They then sent us back to our cabin and told us the deck manager would be into our cabin to speak to us. They promised us that they would deep clean the cabin and sort out the beds, and this is exactly what they did. So when we then came back to our cabin later on, the beds had been put as twins, and we could tell that the cabin had been properly cleaned.
While we were waiting for the cabin to be sorted out, we popped into Bolero's and had a drink in there, and once again the staff were fantastic, all wanted to stop and chat, and it was a really nice friendly feel. Then we headed back to the cabin to see if our suitcases were there and hoped that we'd be able to start unpacking.
While we were unpacking, there was another knock at the door, and it turned out to be the housekeeping supervisor. She came in and told us that she had personally cleaned the bathroom herself, and she hoped that everything was now okay. We were pretty impressed with how apologetic they were and how they kept on top of it. She also told us that they would be sending us some slippers and some bathrobes and some other amenities. So we weren't sure at this point what the other amenities were going to be, but that it was all there as part of an apology. Then
it was time for the sail away party, so we headed up to the pool deck to get involved in that. It was pretty busy out there, but maybe not as busy as I might have expected. It was super, super hot as well, and everybody was definitely having a good time. We really enjoyed the cheesy dances. There was some YMCA, the classic cruise ship Bruno Mars tracks too, and like I say, everybody was getting involved and enjoying themselves, and it's quite clear that everybody is on this ship to have a good time for these 5 nights.
We were quite hot and bothered outside. We're not massive fans of hot weather, so we thought we'd come inside to the aircon, so we headed down to Schooners, and we sat there and enjoyed a couple of more cocktails. These cocktails were quite strong tasting, and yeah, to be honest, we were a little bit shocked with how strong tasting they were, because quite often on a cruise all you can taste is the fruit juice.
We had a bit of a panic at this point and realised that we'd actually pre-booked our dinner table for 7 p.m, and we hadn't given ourselves very long to go back to the cabin and get ready at all. So we hurried back and got ready, and we did make it to the dining room for 7 o'clock. And when we got there, we were pleasantly surprised actually, because normally on the first night of a cruise the dining rooms can be bit chaotic, but there weren't really particularly long queues or anything like that outside. And as we entered the dining room, they had a record of our booking, and we were taken pretty much straight to a table.
Something that we had found interesting on the app was you could actually view all the dinner menus for the whole cruise before we came on board, so we had already started to make a few selections here and there. When we sat down at our table, we were bought a bread basket, which we thought was very excessive for just the 2 of us. And we are wondering what they do with all the bread that they must waste. And then we were asked if we wanted drinks. We both had a glass of wine, and they were very quickly brought to the table.
I started my meal with the crab cake, which, to be honest, I didn't think I'd like. So I was pleasantly surprised by it. It was quite nice. It did have a mayonnaise based sauce, which I don't like mayonnaise, so I didn't enjoy that part, but the crab cake itself was decent. I had no issues with that.
And I had escargot. Now, I would never order this anywhere than on a cruise, but it's a good cruise ship classic, and I actually quite enjoyed it. Nice and garlicky.
Then for main, I had the chicken saag, which was served with rice, and there was chapati and papadum also. It did say it came with raita, which I didn't get, but I didn't want it anyway, so I wasn't upset about that. It was really tasty. The chicken was falling apart while I was eating this, so it was a great meal.
And for my main, I had a New York strip. For some reason, the waiter went, "Are you sure that's okay? Because it's got jacket potato with it." And I'm not really sure why he thought I wouldn't like that part of it. It was a massive piece of steak, far bigger than I thought. A little bit fatty in places, but it was okay.
And then for dessert, I chose the Boston cream pie. To be honest, I just wanted to try it because I thought it sounded fun, and I did quite enjoy it. It was a nice dessert.
And I had a cheese plate. Now, it came out and I said, "Have you got any crackers?" And he was like, "No, there are no crackers on board." So it was a bit of a bizarre thing to have, because I literally had some cheese and some grapes without the crackers. The cheese was quite nice and the grapes were nice, but I would have liked a couple of crackers.
While we were in the dining room, one of the more senior waiters came over to our table and did try to encourage us to make a booking for the same time the following day. We've actually already sort of pre-booked all of our dining for the cruise, so we didn't want to do that because we've strategically chosen the timings that we wanted depending on what we were doing during that day. But they were definitely trying to get people into the dining room earlier rather than later. We did find that the service was really, really quick, very efficient, and the staff were very, very friendly in the dining room tonight.
Once we left the dining room, we headed back to Bolero's and we sat there and enjoyed a couple of drinks while listening to some brilliant live music from the Dukes. We really enjoyed the vast selection that they played because they actually played music that was a little bit more modern and music that we enjoyed when we were younger, such as the Spice Girls. So we really enjoyed them and we are looking forward to seeing them again in the cruise.
Then we headed down to the Ale and Anchor where Lawrence Murray was performing. He is a singer and guitarist and we sat and really enjoyed the performance in there as well. It was super busy in there, but we managed to squeeze on to the corner of like a high table, which was good, and it was a really nice atmosphere also in the Ale and Anchor.
We would have happily stayed in the Ale and Anchor soaking up the atmosphere, but we wanted to get to the theatre for late night comedy. The comedian that was on was called Josh Daniels. We've never seen him before and there were a lot of laughs in the theatre. People were really enjoying him.
Then we headed out of the theatre and into Schooner Bar where Perry Grant was performing. This show was very interesting, I will say, a bit quirky, lots of sort of audience participation involved, and again just really good fun. Everybody was clearly loving it and it was a good lively atmosphere.
We then decided that for research purposes we should pop up to the disco to see what it was like in the Viking Crown Lounge. There were a decent amount of people in there when we first got in and we sat at the bar and had just one more drink before we thought about heading to bed. On the way back to the cabin, we noticed that Sorrento's was still open and we wanted to try a piece of the pizza. So we just both grabbed a quick piece of pizza and sat down. We quite enjoyed it and it was a nice end to the evening.
Then we headed to bed. We had been reminded a couple of times tonight that the clocks were going forward an hour. We were a little bit confused, to be honest, because some of our phones had already done it because we're connected to various bits of cellular network on land and things like that. But we managed to work out what the time should be and made sure that we'd set that before going to bed so that we didn't end up getting confused the following day.
We have had a fantastic day today. We really appreciated how relaxed it all seemed, from that quick embarkation to the brilliant entertainment we've seen. We were also pretty pleased with how quickly our complaint was resolved, and we think that is a good judge of how the cruise line deals with things.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give this video a like and drop any questions you've got in the comments down below. Please do also make sure that you're subscribed to our channel. You can also find us on social media to follow along with our cruises live by searching Sisters on the Seas.